All right, so yesterday you heard, for some, a little bit of a controversial or contrarian message, a little bit of a different message on a very old subject, which is, how do we transition a business? You're all business owners. How many of you have controlling shares? How many of you have voting control? Okay. How many of you have minority shares? You have stock, but you don't have control. Okay, and how many of you are just employees, don't have any stock at all? Okay, we've got a couple. All right, how many of you are founders of your business? Just before I give my summary. Okay, this is interesting. So we have actually more founders in this room than we had in the other session. And in the first session, we had no founders, which is for me, it's interesting. Most conventions I do, whether I'm talking to manufacturing conventions or retail, usually about 30% of my room, 30 to 40% of my room are founders. So it's very interesting that the farming sector is not attracting first-time owner-operators in the sector. I have a couple of theories, and I'll share a little bit later why I think that is. That being said, it is not going to change at all the approach that I want to get into more detail about how to transition your business. Yesterday you heard the message that was a little bit different. Do not gift your business, your farm, to your children. And some of you were thinking, wow, that's bizarre, because I received the family farm for free. Well, not really for free, because nothing is ever really free in this world. We all know that you folks who didn't buy the family farm probably got it having worked several thousand hours for free for your parents. It's called sweat equity. I've heard that phrase a couple of times. You earned it, but in a very different way, and no one really knows if you got the farm exactly for the lowest price or the best price. So when I usually talk about buying the family farm, there's usually a lot of kids in my audience are like saying, who invited this idiot? I thought, I was just going to get the damn thing for free. Who's Farm Journal? I'm going to kill them. And then when kids hear the end of my talk, particularly hopefully at the end of this deeper session, where we go drill a little bit deeper in the approach, kids understand that what I'm trying to do is protect family wealth, which will eventually be their wealth if their parents do what most parents do, which is divide the estate equally among the kids. So while as I'm saying don't gift the family farm, I am saying if the kids don't want to buy it, you need to sell it to someone else and pass the wealth to children. So I gave the example in the previous group that when I was speaking in El Salvador, once I opened my speech, it was a group of large agribusinesses, coffee farmers, sugarcane, and big, like only 6 families run the entire country. And I had this young guy in my front row, and I said, never gift your business to your kids. And this kid reaches into his jacket, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be the first guy who actually bites it. In El Salvador, they'll never find my body. This is bad. So I skipped through right to the end of my speech and said, it's very important that you pass your wealth to your children. And all of a sudden the hand comes out of the jacket, as it does when kids hear this message, and he's buying me a drink at the bar. I'm the new golden boy. Kids, actually, when they hear my message, they kind of dig it. They actually understand that I'm not trying to deny the next generation anything. In fact, what I'm trying to do is protect the value, the retained earnings in the family farm, in the business. Okay? So how do we do that? We do it really by these questions. These questions in my book are not imagined. They were not invented. These are questions that my father asked me. Some of these questions go back to my grandfather. And I've added a question. And I'd like to make that point because I want to be clear that there aren't only 12 questions in the universe to help you transition your business. You may have some of your own. What I do know is that these 12 in particular are absolutely brutal. They are tough. And there's no diminishing just how tough and difficult they are for your kids to answer these questions, and even perhaps for you, if you are the controlling shareholder, to answer as well. What I can guarantee is that after an hour of using these questions, there will be nothing more for your family to wonder about how that business is going to transfer. I like to say that silence is the great destroyer of wealth in family businesses. It's not fighting. It's not the bickering. It's not opening the can of worms with these 12 questions and people fighting. Families are incredibly resilient in dealing with conflict. Families, unlike corporations where people are unrelated by blood or marriage, families figure stuff out. But I'll tell you what will destroy your family. And that is a parent who has no plan, no articulated plan on how the equity in your farm is going to transfer to the next generation. And I'll tell you, I don't know why, although I have some theories, and I've just written another book. I was just telling someone at the back that's coming out in April that deals with this next subject, which is gifting wealth, and why it is that we find it so difficult to struggle to talk to our children about money. We'd rather talk to our children about sex than about money. There is something culturally embedded in our family that makes finance the last taboo. It's like the no-fly zone. And we keep it secret. We don't talk. I could ask this room, how many of you have a will? I asked the first group. That's good. How many have a will? I'm not going to ask who don't have one. Has everyone updated their will in the last 5 years? I'll tell you, that's better than the average. 57% of Americans don't have a will. 57% of people do not have a will. Statistically, roughly 50% of those 57% are Republicans who bristle at the idea of government intrusion in their lives. And yet, they die without a will. I'm not picking on Republicans because Democrats, remember, they die equally with 50% with no will. But the Republicans, they're the ones that confuse me. Because when you die without a will, when you die intestate, you invite the state to take all of your assets and to divide them according to their formula. It's bizarre. It's bizarre how culturally we avoid and eschew conversations about money and finance. And transitioning the family farm is no different. It's the one thing that we push off next quarter, next season, next year, next decade. And tell you what, it's a conversation that's never had. Silence. It's the great destroyer of wealth. How are you going to start this conversation? I think this book is a tool to do it. I think it's the book that you leave under the Christmas tree. I think it's the book that you gently drop off on a bookshelf. You don't have to make a big deal about it. If you drop it off in your parents' house and you want to start the conversation, don't make just drop it off. It's a brutal, if you're not prepared to do that, don't buy the book. The book is completely useless if read by only one person. Don't bother. Don't buy a single copy. This book needs to be shared. Buy a copy and give it to your children. Give it to your parents. Start this conversation. Ask them what they didn't like about the book. Ask them what they did like about the book. It's about starting conversations. As I mentioned yesterday, I've got 12 questions and I want to get through some of them. I know we're not going to have time to go through all of them. But there's 12 questions. I have no answers. The conversations and the answers that each of your family procure will be different. The answers and the conclusions that you come to as a family will be different from the guy sitting to the left or to the right of you. Every family is different. But what's important is that the family arrives at the plan together, that they collaborate on the transition of their business. There is no point in creating lots of wealth as successful farming operations, shooting the lights out, making lots of dough, and destroying your family in the process. What I am going to touch upon in my next book is how most of us will rely on our own children for care. And we're going to do so because the way that we're dying is different. We're not dying of heart attacks. We're getting intervention, and we get stents, and we live a long time. We languish now. We don't die, and we rely on the people, our families, to provide or at least oversee the care that we get. These happen to be the same people who we're not talking to about the transition of the farm. These are the same people who we're not talking to and sharing about how much the farm is worth or how we're going to raise money to transition that farm. So what's going to happen for the majority of farmers? Half of them are going to die without a will. Statistically, half are going to die without a will, and the government will chop up the estate, and they'll do what they do, which is they will give out equal shares to various family members who are alive based on the state formula, and it varies by state to state. It doesn't necessarily all go to your surviving spouse if you don't have a will. So step away from that idea if you think the government will give exactly the way you would give. If you do have a will, many American farming families will do what feels so right. They will use the value system of the family, which is fairness and democracy. That's what families thrive on. We thrive on treating our kids fair. And fair to some people means equal. So what do? They die, and in their will, they leave an equal portion of the family farm to all of their kids, some of whom may be lawyers in Manhattan with no clue on how to actually farm. But it feels so right. How many of you are in business with your brothers and sisters, or just wish you were? Okay, interesting. How many of your kids are all in business together right now? The minority, one. It is unlikely that all of your children will share an equal passion for the family farm. It's just incredibly rare. Some you will get lucky and you'll have a couple of kids who are that's just what they know, it's who they are, it's what they're passionate about. But it is very rare. Dying and leaving a family farm without conversation and context, and surprising children with what you have, not discussing it in advance, will create a serious complexity. Often what will happen is that the surviving kid who is in the farm, who wants the farm, will need to pay out their brother or sister. Now remember, you guys are gone. You parents are gone. The glue is gone. And when the glue is gone, the gloves come off. On my website, I've written an article, it's called Boxing in Court, a game the whole family can play. And it is amazing the number of kids who head to court to resolve the issues based on the conversations that you never wanted to have. So what happens is the kids outside the business simply want their cash and they want it quick. And if you've had a bad year in the farming operation that isn't kicking off the free cash flow, the child in the business who wants the business can't come up with the cash. So, and then there's a fight. There's a fight over the valuation of those shares, because there usually isn't a third-party valuation of the stock, and so someone has to pay for that. So depending on what kind of valuation you get done, that can cost from anywhere between $10,000 and $25,000. So that's got to be split. But I'll tell you, it is unbelievable how families pull themselves apart because of the work that you don't do. So how are we going to do this? How are you folks going to leave something more valuable than money and something more valuable than the family farm to your children? Which happens to be, I think, the family you leave, the relationships you leave behind. I think at the end of the day, as you're nearing your last breath, you're not thinking, my goodness, if only I could have picked up that other 10 acres, that other little parcel over there. That's not what you're thinking. You're taking stock of the relationships you're leaving behind. And what do they look like and what do they feel like? And how good a job have you done, starting early, today, to build those relationships and to prepare them for the most obvious thing in life, your death? What are you doing? I would hope that you would take these questions home and start the conversation, and it would go something like this. Question number 1. What's your business look like in 5 years? That is an easy question, right? That is really straightforward. It's a nice way to slide into the conversation. It's not a hard-hitting question. Soft. It's open-ended. It's not requiring a yes or no answer. What's the business look like in 5 years? So if you were to sit down with your son and your son were to answer the question this way, what's the business look like in 5 years? So I don't know, bigger and stuff. I would not suggest moving on to question number 2. That is not the answer of an owner. This is not an industry of pumpkin patches. This is an industry that requires commitment, capital, sophistication, technology, savvy, relationship building. You're looking for an answer that goes something like this. You're asking me, Mom and Dad, what I think this business looks like in 5 years? I'd sell that piece of land over there. It's a lost leader. It's killing us. That piece of equipment is a disaster. We need to invest in this. We need to sell this. We need better people. We need to buy smarter. We need better insurance. We've got too much insurance. I don't know, but that's the vocabulary of an owner. Owners have a vision and have ideas, and they're not afraid to share them. That's what you're looking for. And if you don't have that, I'm not suggesting that there isn't an owner in the house, but maybe you need to spend some time to nurture that owner mentality. This idea that children just need to wait for their parents to die to get ownership of their business is not working anymore. Something has changed in the American farming landscape that is making the old succession planning model obsolete. As obsolete as the horse and plow is this idea that if we just kind of work in the family farm long enough and wait for dad to die, we'll get it all. Well, guess what? It's going to be a really, really long wait. Guys aren't having heart attacks and dying right away. They're languishing, as I said. It is not uncommon for us to see in the modern farm 4 generations, great-grandfather, grandfather, father and son working shoulder to shoulder to shoulder to shoulder? 4 generations. Statistically, we're going to see it. Now, great-granddad may not be driving the tractor, but he'll hang on to those shares. He'll hang on to that stock in that farm until someone forces the issue. Someone needs to deal with this. I haven't seen the person that I'm talking about, that I'm going to describe in a moment in this room today, but I've seen him at this convention. And there's a reason why he's not in this room, because he's too good for this stuff. He's already got it all figured out. He wouldn't read this kind of book and sure as hell wouldn't come and listen to this kind of talk, because this is kind of simple. And here's the way it works for this dude. It's a very small percentage of the farming population. But here's how the plan and the thinking goes. When I die, there is no plan. In fact, there's no will. And the shares will go wherever the government wants. And the farm will fail. And you know what? That's okay, because everyone will gather around at my funeral and they'll say, "My God, Jim was such a magnificent farmer. Look, he's dead and the farm has failed. Only he could run it." That's how good he is. That guy is here at this convention. I guarantee it. I've seen him. The plan is no plan. The plan is all about him. It's narcissistic. Maybe this guy, you've seen him in your community, you've heard about this farmer who dies without a will and leaves nothing but fighting and chaos and litigation in their wake. That's their legacy. That's what that guy's plan was. This guy is not dumb. These are not dumb people who don't plan. They're not healthy people, but they're not dumb. They know exactly what they're doing. The business is all about control. If you got control of that stock, if you control your family and your employees' lives, you're living the dream. And business is funny. You either have control or you don't. You kind of don't have sort of maybe kind of control. It's one or the other. And when kids are in their 20s and 30s, they want control. Many aren't ready for it. Certainly they don't have the capital to acquire it. But as long as they're moving in the direction and have hope based on conversation about control, the family farm can function. There is inertia in the direction of hope. When there is silence in a family about equity, when there is no discussion of how the equity will transition, hope is extinguished. There is no hope. And the family farmer has left himself with a son or daughter who know in their hearts and their minds that the only way that they can ever get control is how? For someone to die.